Yes.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Jenny Kwan. I'm the NDP candidate for Vancouver East, running for re-election for Member of Parliament. And of course, I want to welcome all of you to beautiful Vancouver East, where everything happens right here in this riding. And I am so delighted that my leader, Jagmeet Singh, is here today. As you know, he's been crisscrossing across the country, talking to Canadians, raising the issues that matter for Canadians, and really bringing their stories forward so that Canadians can know that politicians, that the NDP, that we are listening to them, that we are bringing forward policies that matter to them. And he's been the champion of everyday Canadians from coast to coast to coast to coast. And then, of course, sitting next to Jagmeet is my great colleague, Don Davies, the NDP candidate for Vancouver Kingsway, running for re-election. And you know what? This guy is working so hard out there. You see a sea of orange all over Vancouver Kingsway.
It's true.
And I'm just so delighted that you're all here. So without further ado, I'm going to ask our leader, Jagmeet Singh, to say a few words. And then afterwards, we will take questions from the media. And then food will be brought to the table for everyone to enjoy. And welcome once again to Vancouver East and Jagmeet. Woo!
Thank you. Thank you so much. 大家好，我是 Jagmeet Singh, and I'm really honored to be here with Jenny and with Don. Great examples of what you get with New Democrats. People that fight for you, people that stand up for you, people that are in your corner, on your side, no matter what happens. That's what you get with New Democrats. And in this election, I really want to talk about our new deal for people, our new deal for Canadians. We've seen in Ottawa, for too long, governments have been working to make life easier for those at the very top. They make life easier for the wealthiest, the most powerful, and that makes life harder for everyone else, and people end up paying the price. We have so many examples. Just yesterday, Mr. Trudeau walked away from universal pharmacare. He walked away from families that are desperate for help with the cost of medication. He said to them, help is not on the way. They're not going to get help. Instead, he would rather protect the profits of the powerful pharmaceutical companies, protect the profits of insurance companies, rather than help families. And that's been a trend. It's been an ongoing trend. When it comes to housing, where here in the Lower Mainland, people are struggling to find a place to call home, Mr. Trudeau says, I'll call it a crisis, but I won't actually deliver any real action. And in fact, is investing 19% less than Conservatives as a percentage of GDP. 19% less. So he criticized Mr. Harper, called him out, said he wasn't doing enough, and Mr. Trudeau acknowledges there's a crisis, but is spending 19% less than the Harper government, than the Conservatives. So Mr. Trudeau is going to try to scare you into settling for less. He's going to scare you into settling for less, but the reality is Mr. Trudeau is not in it for you. He's not in it for people. He's in it for the powerful and the wealthy. Last year, he gave $14 billion away to the wealthiest corporations so they could buy corporate jets and limousines, while families were struggling and couldn't afford their dental care. We're saying it does not have to be this way. Our new deal for people includes investments in people, investing to expand our healthcare to include pharmacare for all. That means if you need medication in our country, you would use your health card, not your credit card. It means covering 4.3 million Canadians who don't have any dental care coverage with a plan to cover them immediately. Those families who earn less than $70,000, who have no coverage, will be covered immediately with our plan. That means for a family of four who need to have some cleanings done, maybe a cavity or two with their young ones, that could save $1,200 for a family a year. This is massive savings. We believe in investing in people. Now, Conservatives are going to say to you, we'll save you a little bit of money, we'll cut your taxes, and they might put a couple of dollars in your pocket. But we also know that while Mr. Scheer might cut taxes a little bit, he's going to cut the services that you and your family need, and that's going to cost you thousands. What we're providing is a plan to invest in people, saving family thousands of dollars with their medication, with their dental care, with housing, with childcare. We are going to invest in people. And for young people who are worried about the environment, we want to tell them that we are going to fight as hard as we can with every ounce of our skill, our effort, and our resources to tackle the climate crisis. You can count on us because we don't work for the rich, we don't work for the powerful, we work for you. Thank you so much. Xie Doce, and I'm ready for any of your questions you might have.
Today's deadline to poll all the nomination. Can you update us how many candidates have your party nominated?
Yes, we'll have 338 candidates today. We were actually ahead of the Liberals. We had 338 candidates ready to go before the Liberals did. And it took us some time, but we're proud of the results. We wanted our candidates and our team to reflect Canada. And one of the things I made a commitment to was to ensure that we had more women reflected in Parliament. And to do that, you need more women as candidates. And on our team, I'm proud to say we have 49% of our candidates are women. A record-breaking number. We're really proud of that. We also have one of the most diverse team that the NDP has ever presented. Probably one of the most diverse teams of any party. Nearly 25%, 1/4 of our team are racialized. We've got a record number of Indigenous leaders that are running for our party. 8% of our candidates are Indigenous. That includes chiefs of communities, activists, and academics and leaders. We have a significant number of members from marginalized communities, including the LGBTQ. We have a team that reflects Canada. It looks like Canada, and I'm proud of that. It took some time to do it, but the results are we're going to put forward a team that will help us overcome the barrier, which is not enough women reflected in our federal politics. And we're going to build on the champion like Jenny Kwan, who broke barriers in her own right. We're going to build on that with candidates that reflect what Canada really is.
Honestly, the poll shows that there's a very tight race between the Liberals and Conservatives. You mentioned earlier, if we have a minority government elected, you're not willing to work with Conservatives. Have you changed your position? And if that's the case, what do you believe your party can do, or what can you offer to the voters?
I've only ruled out one party, and I've said because of a host of reasons, Conservatives cut all the services that families need. For me, that's non-negotiable. Families need more service, more investments, not less. And the Conservatives have consistently shown that they're going to cut the services that families need. Mr. Ford in Ontario, Mr. Kenney in Alberta, both of them immediately upon becoming premiers cut healthcare and education. And the families that I talk to tell me they need better investments in education, more investments in healthcare, not less. So I've ruled out the Conservatives. I'm running to form government. I'm running to become Prime Minister. But I've made it clear that I would not work with the Conservatives.
So the new deal for BC, so why is that only for BC, or are you putting out other new deals for other provinces?
Right. Well, we wanted to put forward a unique plan for BC because BC has got a number of unique challenges. We've got a new deal for people that covers issues that impact everyone across Canada, but there's some very specific things we want to tackle in BC. One of the things that we know, the housing crisis is a crisis across Canada, but people in the Lower Mainland feel it probably the worst. The housing crisis is sharpest and most severe here in the Lower Mainland, and in fact across BC. On the island, I heard the story from many people, heartbreaking stories about people who were working hard and couldn't afford their rent, and they were just on the edge, and now they can't afford their rent anymore, and they ended up, one woman ended up in a tent. She's living in a tent in her backyard of her friend's place because she couldn't afford the increase of rent in her place that she was in before. And she said, I can do this if it was just me, but I have kids and I'm worried about them. And so for families like that, we're providing a rental subsidy of up to $5,000. That's going to help 500,000 Canadians who are just on the edge and they need a little extra help to stay in their homes while we build that 500,000 non-market housing that people need. So we've got a plan specifically for BC to talk about the coastline, salmon, wild salmon, and protecting wild salmon, and some of the challenges like money laundering that are uniquely being experienced in BC more than anywhere else. We want to tackle those and give the people of BC a clear commitment that we're not going to ignore them like people often feel. BC often feels ignored. Now that they've got a leader who comes from BC, you can count on me to be there for you.
Can I go back to that? You have ruled out Conservative Party. So have you talked to Mr. Trudeau, like on a personal base lately, and if Liberal get re-elected as a minority, so what are the areas you believe you can work with him? And just now you mentioned about the platform, there's a certain areas you're really not happy with what Liberal is doing, especially for the huge deficit.
Yes.
So what do you believe your party can do, and why the voters in BC in particular want to vote for you?
Well, I want to make it clear, my plan is, and what I'm running for is Prime Minister of Canada. I want to form government because I want to help out people and make their lives better. I don't feel like people should be afraid or be scared into settling for less. And that's what Mr. Trudeau is going to say to people, that he's going to say he's not perfect, he's going to say a lot of promises, and he's going to admit the fact that he made a lot of promises in 2015 and didn't fulfill them. But he's going to scare people with Mr. Scheer and say, you've got to settle for me. I don't believe people have to settle. But anytime we've achieved anything significant in our country, anything massive in terms of stepping forward in a way that helps people with universal pharmacare or universal Medicare, or when it's come to old age security and pension, it's been New Democrats that have led the charge and fought and pushed for those results. So I'm saying to the people of British Columbia and all of Canada, if you want someone to push for what you need to make your life better, you need more New Democrats on your side. Because we don't work for the rich, we don't work for the wealthy, we work for you. And if you want someone who's going to fight for pharmacare or childcare, or you want someone who's going to fight to improve the immigration system, if you need someone who fights for you, it's New Democrats who always provide that support, who provide that undying, unfaltering commitment to stand up for people, not the wealthy.
So you said you are going to build 500,000 new homes to tackle the housing problem. And what's the quota for BC? Is there a quota for BC?
We haven't rolled out the specifics of where we would build the housing, but we know that there are communities that are in most need, and that's where we need to put a lot of emphasis. So where there's a demand and where there's need and where there's the most impacted by the housing crisis, that's where we need to make the investments. But it's going to be across Canada, and our approach is this. We want to tackle the root causes of the housing prices going out of control, which is speculation and money laundering. These are some of the causes that are driving up the cost of housing. But we also know that wherever there's affordable housing in any other country, there's an option for affordable housing that's rental, that's non-market, and cooperative. And that's why it's so important to create that option. Any other country where the housing is affordable, people have a choice between buying a home or renting something that is affordable in the non-market market. And that's what we're going to focus on, the non-profit market.
The Mayor's Council is calling the next federal government to commit $1 billion fundings for transportation infrastructure in Metro Vancouver area. So what's your thoughts?
When we talked about making sure young people have a bright future and tackling the climate crisis, one of the best ways for us to tackle the climate crisis is investing in public transit. So we put forward our Courage to Act, our plan, our Power to Change plan. In French, it's Courage d'agir. Our Power to Change. That plan is going to be focusing on public transit. So we want to invest massively in public transit initiatives. I met with Mayor Kennedy Stewart and talked about our commitments to investing in public transportation. And that means electrifying transportation, investing in more higher quality in terms of access and accessibility and coverage so that it can cover people. They can choose to use public transit. It reduces emissions, better quality of life, a better life for people in the city.
So what's the different? How different is NDP's climate change plan compared with the Green Party's Mission Possible?
Sure. Many people have said, many experts have said that our plan is the best plan, and I'm proud of that. I acknowledge that the Greens also care about the environment and that there is a shared concern around the urgency. Where we differ is Ms. May has said that she would support, that she would be open to supporting the Conservative government, that she'd be open to supporting Mr. Scheer. So she's willing to negotiate things like healthcare and investing in housing and investing in people, because Mr. Scheer is very clearly going to cut those services. She's open to that. I've made it clear that that is not on the table for me. I don't feel it's appropriate to negotiate things like healthcare or to negotiate with things like housing. Those are priorities, and I wouldn't give them up, unlike the Green Party is willing to give them up. And so I've made that very clear, that my position on how we move forward has to be, we tackle the climate crisis, but we also need to tackle the problems that people are faced with healthcare and housing.
NDP's platform has been about not fighting for the rich and fighting for the people. And I'm just wondering, for the small business, for example, in BC, there are a lot of Chinese immigrants who are involved with their small business. And it seems like they have been voted voters for a Conservative. And from your perspective, how would you convert them, in a sense, back to NDP?
Yes, well, I want to make it clear that while we think that the wealthiest aren't paying their fair share, we believe small and medium-sized businesses and middle class and low-income families are paying their fair share. So we would not increase taxes on them. We'd keep the small business tax at the same rate. And what we're saying to small businesses, they know they have workers in their businesses that don't have coverage, and they can't afford to give them coverage because it's too costly for those small businesses. And we know that when businesses, when families have coverage, when workers have coverage like dental care and medicine coverage, they're healthier workers, they're able to produce and contribute more, and then small businesses benefit from that. So our argument to small businesses, we're going to help you out by making sure your workers are healthier, that they have the healthcare coverage they need. Also, small businesses have to pay out of pocket. They're self-employed. They don't have coverage for medicine. They don't have coverage for dental care. With our plan, they would get this coverage immediately. And so instead of having to pay out of pocket for private insurance, we believe Canadians should count on our healthcare system to be there for them. So a small business owner shouldn't have to pay out of pocket for healthcare coverage to cover medication when we can cover that for them. This would save massively. This could be, on average, $600 a year of savings. But if you don't have any coverage and someone in your family is sick, this could be thousands of dollars a year that you save. For the dental care coverage, for example, for a family of 4 that needs the average care in a year, which might include some cleaning and maybe a cavity, that could be about $1,200 of savings that our plan would give. So we will save families and businesses a lot more than the small amount that Mr. Scheer will promise in tax cuts. We will provide in services that will save families and businesses a lot more.
What we heard from the community, from the Chinese community in particular lately, is the issues, the voters' concern is quite different from the mainstream. For instance, the number one might be like immigration or refugee and foreign policy. Like, given that Jenny, she's from the Chinese background, many people were concerned if we have a new government. So what are we going to position as Canada with China under the current situation? And also for our strong allies like UK and Europe, if UK after Brexit, how can we deal with that? So can you answer those? And
Sure.
especially to clear that, because sometimes we heard from the leaders, they are different when they're selling the message out to the English audience and to the ethnic groups.
Sure. Thank you for the question. With respect to China, that is a very important relationship. Canada took the lead in creating an open dialogue with China as one of the Western nations that was the first to have diplomatic communication and relations. This is something that we need to build on. We need to take that relationship very seriously. And what we've seen over the past 2 years has been that Mr. Trudeau has not taken that relationship seriously. There's been inconsistent and a lack of coherency in the approach to China. What I would do is make sure we've got a serious and committed, coherent and consistent policy and approach to China. It's something that is very important to the people in Canada, but also as a significant world leader, it's important for us to have those relationships that are serious and that are based on a consistent, coherent foreign policy. With respect to Brexit and our other allies around the world, we need to make sure we've got open communication, open diplomacy. The Brexit challenge will present a problem for trade relations because we will no longer have the European agreements that will work. So we'll have to negotiate with the UK to develop an agreement. With those agreements, one of the distinctions that we make as New Democrats, our focus isn't on making a trade deal that benefits the wealthiest, the people at the top. We want trade deals that benefit workers. So if there's an agreement that might increase the wealth of a rich corporation but doesn't actually help create jobs, then that's not a deal that we want to sign. We want to make sure that our trade agreements are based on fairness, that let our Canadian manufacturers and businesses compete on a level playing field, and that would be our priority with respect to how we negotiate trade deals.
So you've been very critical of U.S. President Donald Trump, and,
Yes.
and maybe the only leader that has said that you would like to see Trump impeached. So if you were elected, how are you going to deal with the U.S. Canadian relationship?
It's also a very important relationship for Canada. It's a relationship I take very seriously. If it's still Mr. Trump that's in office, we know that Mr. Trump has used bullying tactics very regularly and is bullied to the detriment of Canadian workers. And the only way to stand up to a bully is to be strong. And I will be strong for Canadians. We know with the recently negotiated trade deal, it has hurt Canadian workers. The trade deal will increase the cost of medication, has made it harder for farmers, and does not have any protections for workers or the environment, which means we'll not have a level playing field. I feel that was a bad negotiation that hurt Canadians, and I would ensure that we negotiate deals that benefit workers, that benefit Canadians, not the wealthiest, but the people who actually go to work.
My question at the same time to you and to Don.
Sure.
And can you say a couple words about affordable housing in the across the Canada, and the Don is in your riding.
Sure. I'll start with across Canada, and then Don will
Yeah.
respond to about his riding. So across Canada, this is probably one of the issues that comes up the most frequently. It is an issue across Canada from Atlantic provinces all the way to Vancouver Island and north and south. We hear this issue everywhere. And the issue is a matter of people can't find a place to live, so there's scarcity. They can't find a place. If they find a place, there's an affordability question. It costs too much. And in some places, there are homes, but they're not of good quality. So there's a quality problem as well. So when we talk about building 500,000 new homes, this is a bold plan because we have to make up for 30 years of inaction. Mr. Trudeau and previous Mr. Harper have not made real commitments to build new affordable housing. It's been 3 decades since the federal government has actually built new affordable homes or partnered with municipalities, not-for-profit agencies, provinces to actually build affordable homes. So we need to make up for that time by building massively. In addition, we have to get at some of the root causes, which is speculation and money laundering. So we'll tackle those root causes and we'll invest massively in new affordable homes.
Well, I'm so proud of our leader's position on housing. I think the NDP has the strongest policy to deal with what I think can be called a crisis. You know, there's a lot of issues in politics, but some of them are fundamental, and making sure everybody has a safe, secure, affordable place to live is extremely important. It allows people to participate in our society, to go to work, to raise their families. And I think Vancouver is almost the epicenter of the crisis in Canada. I hear this every day on the doorsteps, and you know, to me, as Jagmeet has said, we've had a generation where the federal government has not participated in as a senior level of government. It's going to take all levels of government, federal, provincial, municipal, working together with the community, with builders, with NGOs. To build the units. The best way to get affordable housing is to build it. And so, you know, I'm very proud of our platform where the NDP says we're going to build 500,000 units of housing over the next 10 years, half of those in the next 5. And, you know, and I'll conclude by saying in my riding, we still see the benefits of the very strong federal program from the 70s and 80s, where they built co-ops. So whether it's Caslow Gardens in Still Creek or Trout Lake or the Flesher Co-op, there's about 15 co-ops in our riding that were built with federal funds, and that just stopped in 1993 when the Liberals canceled that program. So we want to get those programs back up and running.
That's right.
And I think we'll start to see some hope to people who are very desperate for housing now. We've seen people have to leave Vancouver. Families are being broken up. Employers. I was in the Conji Noodle House on Kingsway near Joyce a couple days ago. They told me they can't find staff to work in the kitchen. Why? Because the people can't afford to live in Vancouver anymore. So it's actually affecting our economy as well as families.
So I know the housing plan is a huge plan, but where does the money come from?
Yeah, it's a matter of choices. So if I want to break down the choices that governments make, we'll make better choices and we'll also increase revenue. We take our budget very seriously, but I want to give you one example. So last year, in 1 year alone, Mr. Trudeau spent $14 billion on the fall economic statement just to give the wealthiest corporations the ability to buy corporate jets and limousines. He bought a pipeline for $4.5 billion, and he also forgave $6 billion in corporate loans. If you add that up, that's almost $25 billion of spending, and not a cent of that went to the people that need it. It all went to the wealthiest corporations. To give a contrast, one of our plans to invest in dental care that will cover immediately 4.3 million Canadians. It's a very bold plan. It's a government insurance plan to cover dental care. It will cover all the services that people need. That plan costs $856 million, according to the PBO. So basically, Mr. Trudeau paid for 25 times that program in 1 year. So that's a matter of choices. But on top of that, we're also looking at revenue. So we would ask the super wealthy, those who have fortunes of over 20 million, to pay a little bit more to invest in these programs. We'd close some of the tax loopholes that exist, the CEO stock option loophole, as well as offshore tax havens. Offshore tax havens could amount as much as $23 billion in lost revenue. according also to the PBO. So we've got a lot of opportunities to increase revenue. We'll ask the wealthiest corporations to pay a little bit more, and the highest income earners to pay a little bit more. And with those revenues, we'll be able to fund these programs these services that are so important.
I know the NDP government want to stop the pipeline expansion. So Trudeau government keeps saying that the project maybe can earn the money for government. Do you think it's true or false?
I don't see the evidence, and we've seen a lot of experts say that they don't see any evidence that this is actually going to create any sort of massive revenue. It's going to cost a lot of money up front. It already cost almost $5 billion, 4.5 to buy it. To expand, it might cost another 15 or 16 billion. So all ends, it would be $20 billion. That would be a cost. That means going into debt. And we don't see how the revenue would anyway offset that $20 billion. Instead, if we invest in clean energy and renewable energy, we know that for every dollar we spend for clean and renewable energy, we have massive return in the economy with new jobs created. So that's our plan. We want to take that money, end fossil fuel subsidies, stop the Trans Mountain, and instead invest in clean energy, renewable energy, which will create far more jobs, but also more sustainable jobs that'll be there for the long term.
I heard that you have a childcare announcement today.
Yes, we do.
Yeah. Can you
yes,
repeat a bit?
For sure. Yes, thank you for that. Really proud of this announcement. It's to build on the work here in BC with the $10 a day pilot project, which is a massive change for a lot of families. I met actually a father on the way in, and he told me his wife and him were relying on their line of credit to pay for childcare because it costs so much money, and they were going into debt, and that he got into the pilot project and it transformed his life. He no longer is going to debt. He's saving thousands of dollars. This is a new lease on life. He basically said it breathed life back into him, that he was able to have this project. So we want to build on that and take it across Canada. So it's a $10 billion investment over 4 years. We want to help finance or fund 500,000 new affordable childcare spaces. We also want to put in place better protections for the early childcare educators, so training and good pay. And we want to put in law, our goal is to achieve by 2030 universal childcare that's affordable, so it'll be no cost for families that can't afford it, and very low cost for those who can, to create an opportunity for everyone to have access to childcare when they need it.
Regarding the current poll, it looks like maybe we have a minority government coming. So will you have any plan to have an alliance with one government, one party?
Yeah, very fair question. I appreciate it. So I'm running to form government. I'm running to become prime minister. So I'll put it this way. If I'm a prime minister in a minority government, I'll work with anyone who's willing to put in place universal pharmacare, investments in housing, protecting our environment, the child care plan that we have. So if someone wants to work with me to put that in place, I'm ready to work with them. I've only ruled out working with the Conservatives because they want to cut services and hurt families and cost them a lot more. And I said that that's not on the table for me. Thank you.
What's your comment on the PPC party? People's
Yep.
Yeah.
In general, my comment is their platform is one that's very divisive. They're spreading a lot of hatred. They're saying things that are purposely trying to create division and inflame tensions. They're using words like mass migration, which is not based on any evidence. They're saying things purposely to create division and hate, and that to me is not welcome in Canada. We need to find ways to come together. We can have differences, we can have disagreements, but our differences and disagreements shouldn't create tension and inflame hatred the way Mr. Bernier is doing.
Regarding on that, I remember that you mentioned that you don't agree that the leader of PPC should be invited to the TV debate, right? So is it a part of the reason that you just mentioned that because they have a lot of hate that's spreading out, but I remember the leader of PPC have said that they need a platform to discuss their immigration policy and other policy that they have. Do you think they are worthy to have this platform to have a discussion with you?
It's not because they're not worthy to have a discussion with me, but I don't think that those ideas are worthy to be given a platform. The ideas that are purposely divisive, that are purposely hateful. For me, it was a difficult decision because I do believe in freedom of speech. I'm a lawyer by training, so I believe in people being able to have a different opinion and to be able to debate and have that conversation. But where it goes too far is where the purpose of your speech is purposely designed to inspire hate. Far right-wing groups are the ones that signed and support Mr. Bernier. They're designed to have hatred grow towards new Canadians, towards people who are immigrants. They're purposely creating tensions, and that to me doesn't have a place in Canada or in our political discourse.
And on that, I know that there is a rising xenophobia in Canada, right? So do you think this xenophobia caused by a rise of foreign house buyer or other question in Canada? Like, what is the cause of it?
We're seeing, it's complicated. There's a lot of different causes. I think that some of the things that Mr. Trump has been saying have emboldened people who are hateful, and he said things that have emboldened people that have white nationalist beliefs, and he's emboldened those folks. We also know that online there's a lot of radicalization that's happening, and so one of our commitments is to tackle online hate. There's a lot of evidence mounting that in different platforms online there's forums being used to encourage and incite hateful messages, and we've got to tackle that. Misinformation is also adding to it. When people put out information falsely about what's happening that creates tension or negativity towards new Canadians or refugees, that misinformation is also fueling the hate as well. And so that's why we've also put forward a platform commitment to tackle online distribution of false information, how we need to hold those social media platforms to account. We also, I think, another area where we need to focus, if people cannot find housing, if they can't find a good job, and they're worried in their life, people who are feeling insecure are more likely to be exploited by some leaders to say, oh, you can't find a house because of these new Canadians. You can't find a house because of these refugees. And so they become exploited because they're afraid. So I feel like if we invest in better housing, better healthcare, we make sure people have good jobs, we can tackle the economic insecurity or fear so that people aren't exploited because they're afraid of the future.
Regarding the debate, we know Trudeau is missing 3 of them. So any comment about that? Because right now we're also doing the leadership, interview, but we still cannot see the Prime Minister.
Oh, no.
So do you think it's election tactic or?
I think he's afraid of his track record. He said a lot of things. He made a lot of commitments, and he broke those commitments. And I think he's afraid to face that track record. And a lot of Canadians are disappointed. A lot of people were hopeful that he would bring in some changes, but he didn't. Instead, he continued to help out his wealthy and powerful friends instead of helping out families. He turned his back on pharmacare, turned his back on childcare, turned his back on making investments in housing, spending less than even the Conservatives. He's made decisions that hurt families, and I think he's afraid to stand up, or he's afraid to be held to account to his track record. Yeah.
Every time when we do this election story, every single we always talk about encouraging people come out to vote,
Yes.
especially for people from the ethnic background. And is there any new plans or platform your party putting in place now? Because we're in the dead. Pretty much not much time left now. How to encourage more people from ethnic background or non-English speakers as their first language and young voters come out to vote?
Yeah, it's an ongoing struggle, and I think a lot of folks are feeling a little bit cynical. They're feeling that they were hopeful in the last election in 2015, and a lot of their hopes were dashed by Mr. Trudeau. Young people were excited because Mr. Trudeau said the right things about the environment, and now he bought a pipeline, exempted the biggest polluters, continues to subsidize the fossil fuel sector. So young people are feeling really let down. The big marches that happened, the big strikes that happened just a couple of days ago, those were strikes demanding that world leaders take action. They were strikes against Mr. Trudeau and his actions to buy pipelines and to not tackle the crisis. So I know that it makes people feel less inspired or less willing to want to vote because they give up hope. I want to inspire in people hope. The reason we're in this position is because governments like Mr. Trudeau's and the Conservatives have worked for the rich, and the rich have benefited. The wealthiest, the people at the very top have benefited. I want to benefit people, and I want people to know if you vote for us, if you support New Democrats, we're never going to let you down. We're in it for you. We fight for you. We want to make your lives better. And I'm hoping that'll inspire people to come out and vote. I'm seeing more and more people coming out. I'm seeing a lot of young people that see themselves reflected in our campaign come out to our events. A lot of people that are new Canadians or racialized people or ethnic communities are seeing that they're reflected in our campaign because our candidates, our team looks like what Canada looks like. And we're talking about the problems that people are faced with. And we're giving solutions, real solutions. And I'm hoping that'll inspire more people to vote this time.
Can Jenny add on that, especially
Yes.
from the Chinese community perspective?
Yes, the ethnic minority community. I mean, let me reframe this. I've always said for so long that I am so happy to be here in Canada. We are the faces of the world. And so from that perspective, shouldn't our elected officials represent the faces of our community? And so I am so proud of our campaign, of our leaders' work in recruiting the broad range of candidates to represent us here in Canada as their elected officials in this election. And so we have 49% of the candidates that are women, right? I mean, 50% of the population here in Canada are women. Our party comes closest to representing that reality. In terms of the ethnic community, 25% of our candidates are from the diverse communities. So we are the faces of our community. And so when we think about elections, when we think about policies, when we think about governments, it is so important that we have people from all walks of life who have your experience reflected so that they can bring your voice right to the decision-making table, to be your voice in the House of Commons. This is what I've done in all of my life, and with our leader, Jagmeet, who is the first ethnic minority leader in a national party here in Canada. I think that's significant as well. And so as we work towards really building diversity, especially in the face of the rise in racism, especially in the face of xenophobia that is happening, we have to stand united and say no to that force. We have to be inspiring to people to say it doesn't have to be this way, that we don't have to be beaten down over and over and over again, and to say that discrimination and racism have a place in our society. We can rise up and say that there can be positive change. And this is exactly what the NDP and what Jagmeet has demonstrated over and over and over again. And we will continue to do this until we get the job done. We all deserve it. All Canadians deserve this.
So my question for Jenny. Just yesterday, more than 1,500 people that's met on the downtown and say free Hong Kong. And I remember you born on Hong Kong. Okay, say a couple of words about this situation.
Yes, I'm an immigrant. I was born in Hong Kong. I immigrated here to Canada with my family back in 1976 with a family of 8. And so Hong Kong has a special place in my heart, and it is my birthplace. Watching what's going on in Hong Kong is absolutely heartbreaking and devastating. You know, to see the violence, to see the situation that is happening in Hong Kong. And so we all, I think, want the same thing, and that is to say for peace to be restored in Hong Kong, stability to be restored in Hong Kong. I do think that it is absolutely vital that the Hong Kong administration, and I urge them to take action to bring forward a independent inquiry into the violence that's taken place, and so that we can get onto the path of bringing stability back to Hong Kong.
And at some point, if we want, we can also make sure you get some food as well.
So with Jenny, you previously mentioned the painful uprising, especially in this community. So a month ago, I remember, if I remember correctly, there's a Caucasian woman who present hateful speech towards the Chinese community, and she basically walked away without any apologies or nothing. So. And police says there's no charges on that, and they added if the outrage she get from the online, like for example social media, actually those are considered cyberbullying. So the message that's presented is basically like you present hateful speeches, you won't get charges, but if people who outlashes on you at the hateful speech or whatever you do then they consider cyberbullying and that's chargeable. So do you have any plans on, like, for example, changing the law or something that gives punishment on hateful speech like that?
Well, I'll tell you, my experience, I've been in electoral office for 26 years. This is my 26th year of being elected as a parliamentarian. And I'll tell you this, in all of my years in elected office, I've had hate hurled at me. I've had hate mail, but almost all of the time, that is anonymous. People actually don't tell me who they are. They hide behind screens, they hide behind fake names, and I don't really know who they are. But a couple of years ago, I had white supremacists come right up to me, to my face, to tell me to go back to my own country, to tell me straight to my face that they don't like me because of the color of my skin. They told me right to my face because I am not white, that they don't want me here. This is our reality of what's happening. I think that the Trump administration, in emboldening the racists and the discrimination to come forward, we're experiencing it right here, right now in our communities today. And so to that end, what do we need to do? First off, actually, I think we need to stand up to bullies, as our leader Jagmeet has done. We should not be afraid of even the President of the United States to call it for what it is and speak truth to power, to allow all of us to have a safe place in our communities, to be free of discrimination. In terms of Canada, in terms of what we need to do, we also need to give voice to the people as well. Imagine, for me as an elected official, that I would face that kind of abuse. What happens every single day for everyday Canadians and immigrants? They experience it every day, and they have no place to bring forward their voices and their concerns. They're afraid to do so. So we need to actually allow for that, allow for people to come forward, for their stories to be heard, for it to be reported. I actually think Canada, we actually don't have a hate crime unit across Canada. How is this possible that we don't actually have that in every single province, in every single community? Those are the kinds of things that we will take action on, right? We need to be clear about what constitutes hate and what is not. And if you are someone who's out there trying to spread hate and actually incite hate, we need to take action on that. It's not just the Chinese communities, it's all of us together. The Jewish community continue to be the highest targeted community in the sense that they have the highest hate crimes against them. We have the Muslim community who have the highest increase in hate crimes happening. Right? And the Chinese community, the Indo-Canadian community, the Japanese community, all of us are faced with that. So we need to band together and to say this cannot be allowed, that we will not tolerate hate, and we will not allow for a platform for people who want to spread hate and spread misinformation to generate hate. And as our leader has said, as Jagmeet has said, right, that what we need to do when people face the issues and challenges that they face, the affordability questions and so on, our job as elected officials is to make sure that government invests in them as well, that invest in all of us. We don't need to pit communities against community to say who needs more. The people who don't need more are the wealthiest peoples, the biggest corporations, the top 1%. They don't need more. Let's redirect our resources to the people who actually need more. And we don't need to pit communities against communities. The immigrant community helped build this country, and we need to continue to ensure that that follows through. And we also need to remember that the indigenous peoples, the first peoples, they were the people who suffered the gravest discrimination. And we need to move forward with that and ensuring that not only are we consulting with them, but they also are at the decision-making table to make decisions. So together for the path forward to say a better Canada is entirely possible. It doesn't always have to be the red door or the blue door. There is this bright new future through the orange door. Let's charge through it, make it happen, because when we do that, it's for all Canadians and not just the top 1%.
Jenny, sorry.
If I just might add, as a Caucasian man, the incident that you described was a Caucasian woman who hurled what I think can only be described as hateful, racist comments at a woman of Asian descent, and I personally was disappointed in the decision not to charge her. I think she should have been charged under the criminal code, under the hate crimes, because I think it's important, as Jenny just said, that we take a stand and that we send a clear message that that kind of behavior in public, in front of the woman's daughter, is not acceptable. It's easy to talk about tolerance, but you must back it up with action. And the RCMP is the police of record in Richmond, which is where the incident occurred, I think. And I think the federal government, I was disappointed that the federal government did not direct the RCMP to consider laying charges against that woman, to send a clear message that that kind of behavior, that kind of hateful commentary in public is not acceptable. And I think it was a missed opportunity to send a clear message to all of us that we can and expect better in our country.
Yeah, just want to follow up on this question. Currently, the Chinese community is organizing a petition online asking people to sign to support, to demand the elected officials to do something. It just linked to this incident. Do you all support that? And if you get elected, what do you think you could do?
Sure, I can give you our commitments on that. So one is we've got a commitment to have a hate crime department funded in all jurisdictions across Canada. It's a commitment we have. That's a gap that exists right now. There's not a specifically a fully committed department on hate crime in every jurisdiction. That's a gap in our system right now. The second thing is the hate crime laws right now don't allow for charges to be laid in cases where they should be laid, where there is clearly hate motivated and commentary or language which would meet uttering threats that would be a criminal offense, and it's colored by hateful speech directed towards someone because of who they are. So we need to have better laws, and we also need to be applied better. And that means ensuring that there's the right training in place to know when this type of incident happens, it meets the definition of a hate crime and it should be charged as such. So these are the examples of where we need to actually call out and denounce hate. It has no place in our society, and we can back that up. And with New Democrats, you have a commitment to have an ally working to fight hate wherever it is, with the criminal justice system, with our legal system, but also with policies that will specifically help out people.
Talking about a group of different phrases.
Sure.
Today is Orange Shirt Day, and so one group of people that we can't ignore is the Indigenous people, right?
Yes.
So what NDP have for the Indigenous people?
We've got a host of really serious commitments. This is probably one of the biggest injustices that exist in our country, that the first people of this land don't have access to basic things like drinking water. They don't have access to equal funding when it comes to child welfare, education, and they don't have adequate housing, quality housing. And we've got a federal government, Mr. Trudeau, who has taken Indigenous kids to court, even after the Human Rights Tribunal has found that Canada was wrong. He's appealed the decision multiple times. And at the end, the appeals were not successful because it was clear that Canada breached its responsibility to make sure Indigenous kids had equal funding. Over the past 5 years, over 100 Indigenous kids died in childcare, in Indigenous childcare. That's 100 Indigenous kids that were stripped from their families, that lost their lives because of inadequate funding. And we still have Mr. Trudeau who's challenging Indigenous funding decisions in court. That is wrong. So what we would do as a starting point, we're not going to take Indigenous kids to court. We know and respect they deserve equal funding, and we have to fund them equally. We need to make sure that every community has access to clean drinking water and good housing and access to education. I don't accept in 2019 any excuse with the wealth that we have as a nation, with the technology that we have as a country, that we cannot ensure that every Indigenous community has clean drinking water. I just do not accept any excuse that we can't get that done right away. Oh, sorry. We're just getting a signal, sorry, from Laura. Maybe I'll take your last question, but we'll have to cut off because of our time, but we'll take your last question.
Any comment about the Green Party? Because right now it looks like Green Party and the NDP really competitive. So any comment about
Yeah, I'll make a really clear distinction. I've made it clear that I would not support Mr. Scheer or the Conservative Party because they're going to cut the services that families depend on, and we have so many examples when Conservatives cut services. Ms. May has said she's willing and she's open to working with Mr. Scheer. That means she's willing to negotiate things like education, healthcare funding. She's willing to negotiate housing. For her, those are not priorities, given the fact that she said she's willing to support Mr. Scheer. I don't have that same position. I believe we can tackle the climate crisis, and we also have to tackle things like people who can't get access to dental care and to medications and to affordable housing. That's the difference between us and the Greens. Thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Please dig in and enjoy some of the food. Let me know if there's anything vegetarian that I can nibble on.